Je vous propose de continuer avec donc cette dernière table ronde de la journée pour CFI, Cybersecurity for Industry, avec la thématique, on vient d'en parler sur la table ronde précédente, NIS2, une course décisive pour les PME et ETI de l'industrie. On retrouve Dimitri, qui était là sur la table ronde précédente, qui est le CISO de Dutch Railways. On a Florian Lemoine, qui est chargé de mission à l'ANSSI, et Manuel Boé, qui est Cybersecurity Ambassador, Federal Association of the Protection of Critical Infrastructure. Il va nous parler de son association. Messieurs, peut-être en une ou deux minutes, présenter un peu votre périmètre et un peu plus précisément votre organisation.
Florian. Très bien. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Donc,
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Florian Lemoine.
L'Agence nationale de la sécurité des systèmes d'information, donc l'autorité nationale en matière de cybersécurité.
So for cybersecurity,
depuis maintenant plus de 5
it's been
ans
now more
et
than
cela fait
5 years,
maintenant 4
and
ans
it's
que je
been 4
travaille
years
sur
that I've been
la
working
transposition de
on
la directive NIS2,
transposing the NIS2 directive, starting with the negotiation phase that started at the end of 2020. Dimitri?
My name is Dimitri van Zandvliet. I'm the Cybersecurity Director for Dutch Railways. And as I said in the last panel as well, we are now at a very particular moment in time because 200 years ago we started driving trains in London, in England, and 1839 in the Netherlands. So yeah, it's quite a bit.
Manuel?
So, hi. My name is Manuel Bohe. I'm a cybersecurity researcher at the Federal Association for the Protection of Critical Infrastructure. This is an association in Germany where most of critical infrastructure comes together, like water supply, energy, grid providers, and so on and so forth. And I've been involved in implementing, discussing measures regarding NIS2 in various domains of critical infrastructure so far.
Alors on a la chance d'avoir
So
trois
we are very
intervenants
lucky
de
because
trois
we
pays
have
différents,
three
donc on va
speakers
pouvoir
from three
commencer
different
avec
countries,
vous,
so we can
Florian.
start with
Aujourd'hui,
you,
nous sommes le
Florian.
1er
Today,
avril
this is the 1st of
2025,
April
on est la
25.
transposition
Where are we in
la
applying the NIS2
en
directive in France?
Donc la transposition est toujours en cours.
It's still in progress.
Le texte a passé
So
le
the
Conseil des
text
ministres et plus récemment
went through
le Sénat
the ministry
en
and the
mars dernier.
Senate last
Il
month,
suivra son parcours
and
pour arriver à l'Assemblée
it
nationale
will carry on with the
dans
National Assembly
les
in
prochains
the
mois.
coming month.
Manuel?
Manuel?
Yeah, unfortunately,
Sure,
we are not that far yet. You probably heard, all of you heard regarding our traffic light coalition, which kind of collapsed just a couple of months ago. And unfortunately, NIS2 didn't make it through the legal process. And what's happening now is that our federal Ministry of Interiors is trying to work together with parliament groups to agree on a minimum level for the NIS2 translation to national law, which would be just exactly what's written in the NIS2 right now. So it's exactly the content. Before we wanted to have a broader reform for cybersecurity, and we had quite some content in it, which we'll try to push in later on. But there will need to be some discussion with the new government, which still needs to be built.
Dimitri?
Yeah, I think we are not as far as you as well. And to be precise, I think last Sunday was the deadline for giving feedback to the translation of the NIS2 directive. So we did a lot of work and we submitted to the consultation, and it means that from now on they will process all the feedback, and then hopefully in Q3, they are aiming at Q3, Q4 in the Dutch government where they can transpose it into local law. But I think the CER, the Critical Entity Resilience Act, is even farther away, so probably Q1, Q2 next year. We are not so fast in the Netherlands, no.
Ok, peut-être Florian, peut-être avec vous, voir quels sont les principaux changements apportés par NIS2, quel type d'entreprises sont désormais concernées, et quelles sont les obligations majeures à respecter.
Donc, NIS1 était initialement ciblé sur les acteurs majeurs de quelques secteurs d'activité afin d'assurer leur disponibilité et de préserver le marché intérieur européen. Suite à l'évolution de la menace, on voit désormais depuis quelques années que finalement tout le monde devient une cible, donc que ce soit les collectivités, les petites entreprises, les moyennes entreprises, les entreprises de taille intermédiaire, et également la chaîne de sous-traitance des grands acteurs. Donc, NIS2 est venu en réponse à cette évolution de la menace afin de finalement, vous en parliez juste avant, de proposer une réponse en termes de réglementation à cette cybercriminalité de masse, et cette menace qui touche désormais tout le monde. Donc finalement, par rapport à NIS1 qui ciblait les acteurs majeurs de quelques secteurs, NIS2 va venir cibler toutes les moyennes entreprises les plus grandes, de 17 secteurs d'activité, ainsi que l'administration des États membres, à l'exclusion de certains domaines régaliens. Mais finalement, c'est bien une réglementation qui va toucher tout le monde pour se protéger collectivement et augmenter son niveau de cybersécurité. Si on fait un focus sur le secteur de l'industrie, quelques petits points d'attention et assez importants. On les retrouve dans l'annexe 2 au sein du secteur qu'on appelle fabrication, qui est peu détaillé dans la directive, mais qui s'appuie sur la classification européenne des activités. Donc on va y retrouver des grandes catégories comme les fabricants de composants électroniques, de machines électriques, d'informatique, toute la chaîne de sous-traitance de l'industrie automobile et autres. Donc je vous invite à aller consulter cette annexe et cette classification. Donc, ça peut paraître un peu complexe, mais ça regroupe 580 types d'entités. Et bien souvent, quand on a eu des entités qui nous contactaient en disant je ne comprends pas, je ne me trouve pas dans le périmètre. Et à titre d'exemple, je cite souvent cette entreprise qui se dit être dans l'énergie puisqu'elle fabrique des turbines d'éoliennes, donc accessoirement ses clients sont dans l'énergie, ce qui opérationnellement au quotidien est vrai, mais ce qui d'un point de vue de la directive et du prisme un peu plus juridique et du coup un peu erroné puisqu'on finalement va la retrouver dans l'annexe 2 dans le secteur de la fabrication. And not energy, so you have to be careful about that. Pour ce qui est des obligations, donc les entités qui sont assujetties à NIS2 devront s'enregistrer auprès de l'autorité nationale, devront notifier les incidents majeurs et mettre en place un socle de mesures de cybersécurité. Donc l'idée n'est pas de réinventer la roue, mais de mettre en place des mesures d'hygiène de base afin de se protéger contre les menaces les plus courantes et les attaques les plus fréquentes.
À quel challenge les moyennes entreprises et les ETI industrielles sont-elles confrontées?
What are the main challenges that the SMEs are
sur tout ce qui va concerner les plus petites structures, déjà ça va être la prise de conscience de cette menace. On constate souvent un besoin de ce qu'on pourrait appeler de l'évangélisation, de pédagogie, de prise de conscience, notamment au niveau des dirigeants, mais même au niveau des employés des usines ou autres, qui sont très éloignés de ces notions très techniques. Donc il y a ce besoin de pédagogie. On a également aussi un sujet, je pense, sur la frontière entre le monde de l'IT et le monde de l'OT. Ces deux mondes qui commencent de plus en plus à fusionner avec une dette technique souvent très forte et du coup des risques that are related.
Manuel?
Well, for SMEs, I think first and foremost, awareness is there. Awareness is in place. We have been preaching cybersecurity since many years. We all did, and I think people heard us. So I think awareness is there's enough awareness in the marketplace and small and medium-sized businesses all over the place. But right now, I would say, looking at Germany, costs are an issue. So I think that's a tremendous issue. Really, people are looking at, companies are looking at solutions that that shouldn't be that cost intensive. And when we're looking at it from a larger scale, like what's happening in the United States right now, a year ago, I would have said, going into the cloud is a good idea in terms of when it comes to cybersecurity, because the big ones, the big players will just look after you and have everything kind of in a secure manner, designed, security by design, etc. And now we should actually question if the big cloud solutions are still valuable for that. When it comes to SMEs, this was the first place to go to the big ones, the cloud solutions, so away from on-premise solutions forward to cloud. And now there's a big question mark above all that. And so that's the second point. So I would leave it. I would leave it for that for the moment.
Okay, Dimitri.
Yeah. So Dutch Railways was appointed a critical entity. I think 21st of December 2021. Was just a couple of months after I joined the company. It's actually one of the reasons that they hired me. And that meant that we needed to comply for specific processes for driving the trains, for the information management, for the passengers, for a limited amount of processes and applications. I think around 70. And that was okay. We already had 2 inspections, and the last inspection took place 1 month ago, and that was all good. And now we need to comply to NIS2, and it means that the whole organization needs to comply, all the processes, all the applications. So the whole landscape, that's a big difference. Also, the suppliers that were important. I think in the Netherlands we now have 10,000 new entities that need to comply to NIS2 as well. So that's a very big landscape as well, and we see the Dutch agency also struggling a little bit how to deal with the new influx of companies that are needing to be registered, as you said, but also need to notify whenever there's a breach or whenever they suspect there's a breach. And how do you process all that within the Dutch government? So it's actually quite a step up, not only for the critical entities, but also for the government. And also for the oversight, for the inspectors, because I think they have to hire, I think 200 new inspectors to do the inspections at the critical infrastructures. We don't have 200 cyber inspectors that you can just pull out of the market. So that's a very big problem, actually.
Comment les entreprises moyennes, industrielles,
middle-sized companies and OTI
évaluer leur niveau actuel
how can they assess their current level of maturity regarding cybersecurity and identify the gaps to fill in? Florian.
Alors, il existe un certain nombre de référentiels en fonction des différents secteurs sur lesquels on peut s'appuyer. À ce stade, si on parle maturité, côté ANSI, on a mis à disposition un service qui s'appelle INCYBER. Pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas, à venir passer au stand pour découvrir un peu plus en profondeur, mais l'idée, c'est notamment pour les entreprises qui se lancent dans une démarche de monter en maturité, de pouvoir bénéficier d'un diagnostic gratuit avec l'aide d'un sachant pour déjà établir un premier état des lieux et puis se lancer dans de premières actions de montée en maturité.
Assessments and launch some actions.
Manuel?
Yeah, well, similar is true for Germany. Like ANSI, you're doing a great job with providing those tools. The Federal Information Security Office for Information Security in Germany actually is trying to do the same. So we're providing tools and services to help companies identify and find their path to a high level of cybersecurity. So this is kind of similar. And further, I would just call out for standards. So there are so many standards in place. Let's look at NIST or the ISO standards. Everything had been thought through before. So you shouldn't approach cybersecurity on your way ahead, like exploring new worlds. Everything has been thought of before, so you can just follow proven principles and standards and ideas.
Yeah, well, what we used to do was use the NIST framework and look at the 5 domains: identify, detect, respond, protect, respond, and recover, and do an assessment on how far are you in your maturity. Is it predictable? Is it, well, the 5 levels. And then we stopped with that when NIS1 came, and we built our own control framework, and we mapped all the new legislation back to ISO 27001. And now for the AI Act, we also use the 42001. And we build it in a new framework. And whenever there's a new law, we see if it can be mapped back to one of those controls. And if it's not in the framework, we build a new control, and it gets added to our standard baseline. So we have a standard baseline. And for crown jewels, we need to do risk management. That means that you do your business impact assessment, your threat analysis, and from that you do the regular PDCA cycle that you normally do within your information security management system. So actually everything is very much integrated, and by the level of integration, I think it also shows the level of maturity that you have. So that's the way we do it now.
Alors, vous avez déjà cité un certain nombre
you have mentioned already a certain number of approaches, but what are the methods and the tools that are the most adapted to simplify the compliance? Manuel.
Well, methods and tools. Well, actually, when it comes to methods, I would refer back to the standards, because these are kind of the methods how to do it, and there are lots of tools available, so like online services and so on that promise compliance. But honestly, I would advocate for really digging into the ideas and into the standards and into what you actually want to achieve yourself. So don't rely too much on tools, but really try to do something in terms of cybersecurity and compliance, because there's a point to it. The threats are real. So having someone in your company to really dig deep into measures and risk management in a way that it really pays into your business and helps you reduce risk is essentially the basis for everything else. And then you can pick the tools, whatever you want to. There are lots of them, but I would really advocate for digging into that yourself.
Well, I think it's a combination of automation and doing proper audits. So we have attack surface management tooling to see whether you have your vulnerabilities internally and outside in as well. There's also the manual labor of looking at the evidence that they put into the control framework. So we use ServiceNow for that. And the product owners, they receive an invitation for an attestation of a control in their application landscape. And then they need to upload the evidence. And then you need sometimes you can automate that as well. But if that's not possible, you need to look and to see if the evidence is really correct and if it can be proven. Because there's a big difference between the other regulations and the situation we live in now. It needs to be proven, right? You can't just say we have set up a control so we can check the box. No, you need to prove if it's working. So if the control is working, if it's not working, the control will fail, and it means you are not compliant.
Florian, vous voulez ajouter quelque chose?
Florian, did you want to add something on this notion of compliance? As far as we are concerned, there's some guidelines that are currently being prepared so that we can supply a path to follow to reach the objectives that are set in the regulation to comply with regulation from NIS2.
au niveau national français, on devrait avoir une vingtaine d'objectifs.
We should have about 20 objectives, and for each objective, there will be measures that will be recommended as being optional, in fact, but depending on the agency, well, according to the agency, we means you can reach the objective. So this is one element to compare to tackle this notion of compliance, which sometimes is different from maturity that we mentioned just before. That's it.
I think also what's very important is to distinguish that the law and the controls that are being set, you need to really make a definition of done within your own organization, because you can't just use the regulation. It's way too vague. So, and even the ISO 27001 is very vague. SIS baseline is perhaps a little bit better. DORA is even much better. But we have at Dutch Railways, I think we have 350 development teams, and some of them are working in Azure, some of them are working codeless, and they need their own definition of done. So for the control framework, you really need to dig into their environment and to see how is a control really working? How can you do the attestation of the control? So it's a lot of work, really, to get it really good.
On va bientôt passer la parole au public pour
soon we're going to move to Q&A, but I wanted first of all to go back to what you mentioned before.
Quel est le rôle des
what is the role of the major institutions, and what role can they play in supporting their partners, their suppliers, to access compliance? Florian.
Par nature, ils vont
By nature, they will structure the market, obviously.
Nous, ce qu'on pourrait conseiller, ce serait
de mettre
en avant une certaine collaboration entre les grands acteurs.
We should highlight collaboration between major players at each stage of the value chain, but basically using the collective dimension to rationalize the expectations in contracts and so on, making sure that there's some coherence in the same theme,
et de préciser finalement les demandes qui peuvent être faites aux sous-traitants,
requests that can be made to the suppliers, so that it simplifies everybody's life.
Manuel?
Yeah, I think without auditing, it will be it's difficult to enhance small businesses in terms of their cybersecurity, because on their own it's about the cost and it's about the effort. So they need something they do that for, some kind of motivation. And maybe it's a fear motivation when you say, okay, big suppliers coming for an audit to a smaller company, but it works. So this is part of the truth I've seen in automotive quite for a long time. As soon as the bigger company is taking it serious and is driving out to its supplier and doing an audit, and that's when cybersecurity actually just evolves, and small businesses take it serious then. That's uncomfortable truth.
I think what is very important in the supply chain is to get your contracts right for every vendor that you have. To have the right to audit, but also to require that they have, for example, if they are a high-risk vendor, that they have a SOC 2 Type 2 assurance from their accountant, for example. And the other thing, I forgot the other thing. What's the other thing? I had two things. I forgot the other thing. I'll remember in 1 minute.
Certaines moyennes entreprises et ETI industrielles sont véritablement dans l'industrie lourde avec beaucoup d'outils. Comment on va raisonner NIS2 pour
NIS2 in that respect for those companies, Florian?
You got it back.
Can I do it first? Yes. Yes, I remember. I think the one thing that sucked from NIS1 was that you need to notify, but nobody notified. There was not a real good incentive. And I think in NIS2, that we need to do better, because if everyone is notifying the national authority, like the ANSI or the Dutch NCSC, then you get wisdom of the crowd and you have early detection of things that have massive impact. So I think it's very important to have that system better in place than at NIS1 level, because that was really lacking. Sorry, thank you.
Pour les entreprises,
so for companies in the heavy industry where there's a lot of OT,
est-ce que vous pouvez répéter la question?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Un certain nombre de moyennes entreprises et de
some middle-sized companies and industrial OT belong to the heavy industry sector with a lot of OT. So how can we think about NIS2 for these companies? Oh yeah, that's right.
Bon, on en parlait un petit peu en début.
So we mentioned it
de nombreux challenges à
there's a
venir.
lot of challenges to come.
Un gros travail de
There's
préparation
a lot of work to do in terms of preparation.
C'est un peu
it's kind
le bon
of
côté d'être en retard, c'est qu'on peut un peu
the good thing about being late is that you can be better prepared, I guess.
On invite les entités déjà à réfléchir vraiment à se structurer en interne,
identifier leur système d'information,
their information system,
make a distinction between classical IT and then OT,
identifier les interconnexions between IT and OT. Voilà, des capteurs qui évoluent,
sensors that evolve.
Étaient filaires un instant,
they used to be connected, now they are wireless. They used to be wired, now they are wireless. And then talk to site managers to let them know that we need the expertise of the people working on site on the machines.
Il va falloir bien cartographier
so we'll have to have the mapping of all this and establish an action plan over several years. So we are aware that it's going to be long-term work, and the idea is not to finish everything in 1 year. We know it's impossible, but to have the right structure internally to, I believe you mentioned it earlier in the previous roundtable, but integrate this notion, cyber notion, in the business notion that prevails per definition, but that requires to be integrated as we go by interactions between business, experts in cyber, and site managers with concrete issues on machines. So NIS2 does not reinvent the wheel again. I agree with what was said before about the fact that the regulation is there to answer, so we will implement a minimum basis. Let's take the time to do things right, because we have a lot of technical debt to catch up with. Manuel?
Yeah, when it comes to a critical infrastructure, there's so much OT. It's everywhere. When we're talking about water supply, railway, we're talking about grid, energy, whatsoever. So it's OT, IT, all over the place. And I've spoken to a colleague in Kiev last year, and he told me in Kiev, as we have been under attack from Russia, it was difficult, no question, but we are. Ukraine is not that high technical as we are, so they don't have so many OT elements, and they're not that much digitized as we are. So, considering that we have state-sponsored groups, state-sponsored attackers, we need to assume that they are already here and that we're under attack all the time, which probably you can confirm. We don't know where they are. So where in our systems they are at the moment. So a couple of years ago, we had the discussion regarding IT and OT splitting. Now we got back to IT-OT convergence. So just putting those together, that we're more efficient. And from our point of view, from the BSKE, where I'm from, we just propose, would say it's very much it's about zero trust structures and philosophy within the network, within the systems.
Yeah. So if you buy a new train, it takes up around 7 years before it's on the track. So, and we still have trains that are older than 40 years. That means that 50 years ago, those were ordered, and now the equipment to maintain those trains are of the same age. So in our factories to maintain the trains, we still have those old systems. So We need to air gap them. We need to do specific risk mitigation on the OT environment. But altogether, it's not rocket science. It's old stuff, and there's there's well-known best practices to isolate it, to have a data diode in your OT environment. We now even have our next-gen firewalls with AI on the train on the first series. We have it running for IT, for OT, for the Modbus, for the CAN bus. So that's we are stepping up the game there as well. But we talk about the baseline, and if you look at the amount of attacks and the ransomware and data exfiltration, 80% still happens because of credentials that are leaked, that are being sold on the dark web. There's no MFA, and you get in, you get your stuff. It's simple as that. So it's not always very difficult to get in a company. If you do the basic hygiene is what you need to do. And that's also what NIS2 says. And for your crown jewels, perhaps do a bit more, but start with the basics, and then you are for 80% perhaps better off than you were before NIS2.
Le titre de cette table ronde était NIS2, une course décisive pour les PME et de l'industrie. Vous confirmez, c'est vraiment une course décisive, ça veut dire que certaines PME, TI n'y arriveront pas, ou tout le monde y arrivera?
Je suis d'une nature assez optimiste, donc j'ai tendance à dire que collectivement on peut y arriver. On travaille beaucoup à l'agence avec des groupes d'acteurs, qu'ils soient sectoriels ou territoriaux. Je pense que ça reste une bonne manière aussi de monter en maturité, de travailler ensemble, de discuter avec un acteur qui est peut-être certes notre concurrent, mais qui fait face aux mêmes menaces, et qui a vécu des attaques peut-être différentes et qui a un retour d'expérience spécifique. Et donc ce partage-là, nous on invite vraiment les entités à se regrouper et à pouvoir échanger. Ça facilite aussi les interactions avec l'agence, puisqu'on peut toucher plus de monde. Donc au-delà de la complexité de la tâche et du fait que ça va prendre du temps, comme Dimitri l'a dit, l'objectif de NIS2, c'est de mettre en place des mesures d'hygiène de base. On ne va pas imposer des obligations qui n'ont pas de sens. Et donc, finalement, la complexité technique, elle existe déjà. Il y a déjà des solutions sur le marché, il y a déjà des acteurs qui le font. Il y a déjà des entités qui ont un certain niveau de maturité. Et donc, cette marche est accessible, finalement. On a fait en sorte de la rendre accessible pour tous.
Manuel, Dimitri.
Yeah, I share your optimism to some part, and I really like your optimism. So how can I put that then? I would say what's difficult is the people part. So the knowledge part within small businesses, particularly. Big companies pay high salaries, get great people from the top universities. But in Germany, we have around 30,000 companies that will fall under NIS2. So that's quite a lot, and I don't know where we should get that people from. So when it comes to collaboration, I really like that idea to group up and help each other. I would also do a shout out into the consulting and service market, and there is an idea which is to have cybersecurity as a service to be much more integrated, because it's about know-how sharing. We need to just a minute ago I said you need to do this within your own company, but there's no reason why you shouldn't purchase a service outside to have someone come and be really part of your company. And because consider you have a medium-sized small business like 200 employees. Usually they do not have a full-time cybersecurity expert on that level. So they're not really they're doing some admin stuff, and by the way they're doing cybersecurity. And that's not sufficient. So it would be much more helpful to have someone from service consulting, however, a solution providers who's really integrated in the business and is coaching the business and walking them through how to get up the maturity according to their risk profile.
Yeah, your question is, will SME survive if they don't comply to NIS2? I think it's irrelevant if they comply to NIS2. If you don't have your cyber hygiene in place, you will be hacked, you will be ransomed, you will go bankrupt. And if you don't have the cyber checks and balances in par, nobody will give you any business anymore. So with or without NIS2, we live in a time now that you need to be aware of the adversaries around you, the digital risks that you have. So better get your act together.
Merci, merci à vous trois. Est-ce qu'il y a des
Thank you to all three of you. Do we have questions from the audience?
Monsieur là-haut,
oh yes, at the top. Let me come to you.
Bonjour, merci.
Good afternoon and thank you for
Je vais avoir 2 ou 3 questions si ça vous dérange pas. Ma première question va être plutôt concerner Florian de l'ANSSI. J'ai cru comprendre qu'il y avait à peu près entre 10 et 15 000 plutôt entreprises en France qui étaient concernées par cette conformité. Est-ce le rôle de l'ANSSI aujourd'hui d'aller taper aux portes de ces entreprises pour les informer de cette sensibilisation qui va être obligatoire pour ces entreprises? Je pense que c'est même certaines entreprises ne sont pas au courant à date.
Some companies are not aware of it.
Merci pour la question.
Well, thank you for this question.
Est-ce que c'est le rôle de l'ANSSI?
So is it the role of ANSSI?
Je pourrais répondre en disant que nul n'est censé ignorer la loi.
No one is supposed to
Donc, lorsque la loi sera en place, effectivement, les entités devront par elles-mêmes se déclarer à l'autorité nationale. En revanche, on est tout à fait conscient du fait que c'est une directive sur un domaine technique qui n'est pas forcément connu du grand public, comme on disait un petit peu en introduction. Et donc, on a déjà commencé à construire un réseau pour pouvoir s'appuyer sur des relais et effectivement aller communiquer le plus possible. Alors ce sera d'autant plus facile lorsque les textes seront arrêtés et qu'on aura un périmètre qui sera défini. Je pense notamment à tout ce qui est établissement public, collectivité et autres. Et donc dès lors qu'on aura des textes bien arrêtés, on pourra effectivement peut-être pas aller toquer à la porte de toutes les entités, mais à minima s'appuyer sur des relais et communiquer beaucoup plus largement pour sensibiliser et attirer l'attention sur cette nouvelle réglementation, ces nouvelles obligations, mais surtout sur le risque associé à ne pas mettre en place ces mesures d'hygiène.
Ma deuxième question, c'est certaines entreprises ne sont pas prêtes à être en conformité essentiellement en raison du contexte économique qui est extrêmement compliqué, qui l'est de plus en plus ces derniers temps, et donc des budgets qui sont beaucoup trop conséquents pour ces entreprises. Quelle réponse vous apportez face à ce problème important?
J'imagine que c'est toujours pour moi.
Oui, je pense.
Sur la question du budget, déjà, ce qu'il faut savoir, c'est que dans le secteur de l'industrie, ce seront des entités dites importantes. Donc, ce sera le premier niveau à atteindre en matière de mesures de cybersécurité. Donc, au niveau national, il y aura moins d'exigences, moins de frais associés. Le deuxième point qu'il faut avoir en tête, c'est que ça va prendre plusieurs années, donc on a conscience de ça. L'objectif, c'est bien de se mettre en ordre de marche, de commencer à préparer le terrain et de budgéter au fur et à mesure des travaux, finalement les différents projets de mise en œuvre de NIS2. Donc on a conscience que ça va prendre du temps. Et à nouveau, le point important est quand même de savoir d'où on part. Si effectivement on n'a rien mis en place en termes de cybersécurité, ça risque de coûter beaucoup d'un coup. Donc il faut lisser la charge.
Yeah, and I think also you have the assumption that being cyber secure is very costly, but not being cyber secure is way more costly. So it's no choice. You have to step up your game. And if you are delivering goods or services to critical infrastructure, we are heavily reliant on the supply chain. So we need our suppliers to be cyber safe, to have checks and balances. And of course, we will help. We organize a lot of roundtables with our supply chain partners, and particularly the SMEs. But if you're not able to follow the world that we live in, you will be out of business in a couple of years anyway.
Oui, je suis tout à fait d'accord avec ce qui est dit, mais je pense que pour certaines entreprises, le gap est tellement important
said, but the gap is so big for certain companies that financially they will not be in a position to accept this. That's an observation. I understand that you cannot have a magic wand. It's just an observation from my part. That's what's going to happen for a minority of the concerned companies.
If I may jump in. From my point of view, there's always the first point is you got to get moving. You got to get moving in the right direction. There's no point in denying the law or whatsoever. There's no point in doing that. And there's the value chain as well. So your clients, your customers will just ask you to do that. And the third part is, from my point of view, there's always a cheaper solution. So it's not, when you go through the market, there are lots of really expensive solutions, but there's always another one, another smart idea how to do things. For instance, open source is very helpful in many occasions. And when it comes to information security, I would say, okay, this is just thinking through how your business is going and how you could make it secure. This is thinking time. This is not an invest. And for all the consultants, they're really helpful. But still, the majority of ideas how to secure your own business should come from within. So this is time.
Agree. Et peut-être dernière question, si je peux, oui. Dernière question, c'est, comme ça a été évoqué dans le précédent atelier, quid des entreprises plutôt dans des contextes internationaux qui ont des présences dans différents pays d'Europe vis-à-vis de la mise en conformité, sachant que les transpositions semblent différentes en fonction des pays.
Alors, je ne suis pas sûr de bien avoir entendu la question, mais j'imagine que j'ai compris la question quand même. Pour ce qui est des entreprises qui ont des structures pan-européennes, le premier point et le premier conseil qu'on peut vous donner, c'est de faire appel à votre direction juridique. Il va y avoir une notion importante qui est la notion d'entité. Pour déterminer notamment au sein d'un groupe qui a plusieurs filiales, celles qui sont établies en France, aux Pays-Bas, en Allemagne, en Italie ou autres, et identifier les activités qui sont fournies par ces filiales dans les pays de l'Union européenne. Et donc c'est plutôt un sujet juridique dans un premier temps, pour s'assurer de la bonne déclaration de l'entité dans le bon État membre dans lequel il est assujetti. Ça, c'est la partie un peu juridique, enregistrement, et pour la partie mesure de cybersécurité, il y aura effectivement des référentiels nationaux. Certains vont s'appuyer sur des standards, d'autres sur des référentiels propres. Il y aura vraisemblablement des passerelles entre ces référentiels dans la mesure où ce qu'on peut retrouver dans les différents standards, dans les différentes réglementations référentielles sectorielles, dans les différents référentiels nationaux, et dans l'objectif de NIS2, ce sont bien des mesures de cybersécurité de base et des thématiques de base. Vous allez retrouver dans tous ces standards, dans tous ces référentiels, la gestion des accès, la gestion du réseau, de la gouvernance, de la réponse à incidents, de la gestion de crise. Donc il y aura effectivement peut-être une forme différente. Il y aura peut-être des niveaux d'exigence différents en fonction des pays, mais la passerelle sera identifiable. Donc il y aura effectivement un travail à faire collectif au niveau des États membres pour pouvoir clarifier cette correspondance.
Yeah, I think that's a very big difference between an act and a directive. So DORA is way more prescriptive than the NIS2. And I have a lot of colleagues that are doing business in Europe. And then, for example, if you need to translate the requirements into processes for notification, for example, when all those processes in every European country is different, it's very difficult to add them all up and also to keep oversight in your SOC. So that's giving a lot of headache, to be honest. So you need to really make your own control framework and try to push all your subsidiaries into the same framework as much as possible. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to manage. Yeah.
Okay. Robert Kloos from Trust Matters. For all three panel, I'm resident in Brussels. The Belgian government has already put in place a NIS2 law, and they ask for 3 levels of compliance relative to the size of the organization. What kind of path is France going to? And that's one point. And the other point, would that make sense to allow from a single customer perspective, like the Dutch rail, would it make sense to have different levels of compliance for your set of suppliers?
Donc en France, il y aura 2 niveaux
In France, there will be 2 levels of requirement.
Le niveau essentiel
so
et le niveau important.
And the important
Donc on aura un référentiel avec des objectifs propres à chaque type d'entité. Aujourd'hui, pour ce qui est de la partie des fournisseurs, si le fournisseur est entité essentielle ou entité importante, il sera soumis à ce référentiel-là. En France, il n'y aura que 2 niveaux. Modulo les entités qui sont soumises au règlement d'exécution dans le secteur du numérique, qui auront un référentiel propre à suivre.
I think it's the same in the Netherlands. I wasn't aware about 3 levels in Belgium. I'm wondering what the 3rd level is. So we have essential and important.
Yeah, basic level.
It's in between.
It's below.
Below important.
You're talking about the basic level? In Cypher, the basic ones, or what is the 3rd one you're referring to? I don't know who's talking actually.
But then you will have tens of thousands of SMEs also to manage within the local authorities. That's undoable.
Peut-être continuer cette discussion après le...
Maybe continue this discussion after this meeting.
Okay. I think so.
Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions?
Do we have more questions on this theme?
NIS2 et les moyennes entreprises et ETI. Mais écoutez,
in that case,
vous avez été
I think that
complet,
you've
messieurs.
been
Merci
comprehensive.
beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Vous applaudir.
Gentlemen, a round of applause to you.
J'ai quant à moi une annonce à vous faire
I have an
à
announcement
propos
to
du
make
forum
concerning
INCYBER
the
des
INCYBER
territoires.
Forum of Territories.
Je vous informe que
I
les
inform
22
you
et
that
23 mai
the
prochains se
22nd and
tiendra
23rd
au
of
Creusot,
May
la première édition du
in Le
forum
Creusot, in
INCYBER des territoires,
Burgundy, there will be
un
a
événement
first
dédié à la cybersécurité
INCYBER
industrielle
forum
et à la
dedicated
transformation
to
numérique des
industrial
territoires. Voilà, merci beaucoup
cybersecurity
et à
for
très
the
bientôt.
territories. Thank you very much. See you soon in Burgundy or elsewhere. That's goodbye from us.
That's been an interesting discussion, but so far